I don't know about you all, but I hate taking tests. But there's beauty in self-assessing ourselves and self-assessing whatever situations that we're in. Now, when I say test, I almost get goosebumps because especially in undergrad, I hated tests. Like I would get testing anxiety. What was crazy, I would actually tutor some of my classmates on a subject and they would get a better grade than me, and I was tutoring them because of testing anxiety. With all that being said, remember, I'm a teacher, not a speaker, and guess what? You're about to take your own test, your own self-assessment. I named the test the ION test, ION. You're about to take an ION test. Now, when it comes to an ion in science is simply an atom that becomes charged. The charge could be positive or negative because atoms typically are neutral. An atom is made up of 3 parts. If an atom has 20 positive protons, guess what? It's gonna have 20 negative electrons, so they balance each other out. Now, whenever an atom has an odd number of one of those parts, it could become charged, meaning it's positively charged or negatively charged. However, it's still charged. That's the difference between an atom and an ion. But I'm gonna flip it again. When I say ion, I-O-N, I'm asking, are you invasive or are you native? I had to switch it up again, right? Are you invasive or are you native? So I'm down in Florida visiting some family and there is an influx of lizards. They have not always been here. Some of these lizards have come from Africa, some of them have come from another country. There's one type that is a form of iguana, and there's another one that has a red head and like a grayish body. I don't remember the name of that one, but they have just taken over. They are an invasive species. They do not belong here. And even though they don't belong here, they are flourishing due to the climate here with the warm temperature, access to a lot of water, to a lot of the food, the insects, a lot of greenery as we see in my background. So they are flourishing in these areas. However, whenever that invasive species comes in, they change the ecosystem. They take over, they eat insects, or they eat the food that the native, the animals that belong there, the organisms that belong in the area that are naturally there, the invasive species comes and takes over. But one thing about that invasive species compared to the native species, they're not built for this area. Every now and then, the temperature drops, and these iguanas and other lizards, which are invasive, they are cold-blooded, so they are not accustomed to lower temperatures. So what happens, because they're cold-blooded, when the temperature drops, it's like they lose their energy. It's like they could barely control their muscles. And they sleep in trees, so when the temperature drops, their body drops. I mean, they're falling out of the trees. When the temperature drops, you can walk around and see dozens of these lizards littering the ground. They're not dead, but they're not able to move. You know, they start to lose their bodily function because they are not native here. Whereas all the native species, they know their body is adjusted. Their body knows how to handle being in this climate, being in this environment. If I were to look at the invasive species and the native species, there are times when the native species flourishes. There are times also when the invasive species flourishes. The native species is accustomed to the environment, the temperature, the landscaping that's here. The invasive species, they're going to a different environment, one that they're not accustomed to. They can flourish, they can do well. However, when that environment changes because they're not accustomed to it, that's when they start to lose their function. That's when their metabolism slows down. That's when they lose energy. So there's value in the invasive species. There's value we see in the native species. And if we were to put it all together, there are times when we as humans, we need to function like that invasive species. We need to be able to go in a different environment and know how to find food and know how to create our own habitat, our own system, our own culture. But we also need to look at that native species and realize, how is it that they're able to cope with that colder temperature? How is it that they're able to handle and master the climates when they change? There's value in both of them. As we self-assess, as we take that ion test, I want you to identify which one are you. Do you feel like you're more of the native species or more of the invasive species? And I want you to realize that there is value in both of them. We need to almost create a blend or a marriage between the two of those concepts. We need to learn how to adapt to change. It is not easy. I'm a person that loves structure. However, life isn't always going to be structured, and it's not going to always have a balance. There will not always be an equilibrium. So when that change happens, when that obstacle comes, we don't want that change to have us shut down. We don't want it to bring us to a complete halt where we're no longer able to move and accomplish what we want to accomplish. So invasive or native, I want you to be successful on that ion test. Remember, I'm a teacher, not a speaker. I want you to have an amazing day.